I could have Kevin and Rick come up. Yeah, so we're going to have you sit in the middle. We're going to...
My mic, we did all this mic work to try to sit there.
Oh, did you really?
That's okay.
We're
sorry.
Fine. Okay.
I got you.
First of all, I want you to think of what did you hear in common across these supply chains to admire award winners as we talk about leadership. I made a whole list, right? The first thing is diversity. Let's celebrate diversity. If I were doing this 5 years ago, I would have all old white men. Sorry, Rick. Okay. But I want to embrace diversity on the stage, right? This is about supply chains work better with diversity, right? I heard culture, right? What did you learn from each other about culture?
Well, I learned it's foundational. Whether we call it mindset, I think you called it mindset, Rick, or rethinking. It's all about how we train our habits. Culture is about habits. What your habit is as a company is how your culture goes, and all of us are looking at how can we reshape, rethink, and kind of get our mindset shifted with all of our folks to change our culture to transform the company.
I'd add to that just the concept of values is critically important. We all have them. One of the things I'm most proud of at Clorox is we actually do everything we can to try and live them each day. And, sometimes that's not true in every organization. They look good on the wall outside your office, but then you try and translate that into action within the company and the way leaders behave, the way they treat their people, the way they treat themselves, and they don't match up. So I think that test of values is a really important concept as part of culture.
And then you talked a lot about coaching. You talked a lot about thanking people. Ashley, you talked about 100% of people can be themselves. Those are all extremely important concepts, right? At, principle-based leadership, we got a lot of pretty signs around a lot of offices, but walking the talk is not something that's easy, right? Any thoughts there?
We have a new approach. I know labor, right? We talked a little bit about labor being a big problem. And who thought in a world where we were going more AI and machine learning that we would still be so focused on labor and people? And I think what we're learning about at Sleep Number is how to have empathy and listen, and then make sure that our actions are matching what we're hearing. A small example of that, and I think we're a little strange in this department, but we right away heard that our team members did not want to come back to the office. They would, if there was a reason to gather and to get together, but for the most part, they were enjoying more family time, less commute, all of those things. And we are in the midst of actually redesigning our office to help with that, to actually encourage that, meaning people are going to give away desks. We're going to have more hoteling, we're going to have more, I forget what we call it, space, works like sofas, talk space. And that's been really important for us, is to see that all the way through so that people can bring their best self to work and work for their day.
I really agree with that. And I would add to that, the concept, what you said about listening is really important, Ashley. And I think sometimes we don't do that enough or well enough. I mean, we say, hey, how you doing? Well, 5 years ago, that just meant I'm greeting you. Today, I think it really means something, and we have to listen to that response and look for the physical reaction to see how is that person really doing? Because to your very good point, there's more stress than any of us can ever handle, and we've got to be there for each other.
Right. We forget that empathy is about people. It's not and I think I said this on the podcast, it's not just a word that we use in design thinking. It's really caring how another person is feeling and listening to them. Don't ask that question and then go to the next thing you want them to do. But you have to, in this new environment, be ready to sit down and have a real conversation when a person's not doing too well.
And Kevin, I thought you gave us a great gift when you said, let's get to the bad news.
Yeah.
I mean, how many people want to tell their bosses the bad news? But when you embrace the bad news and you try to help people, what a great gift.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Or if I could, I would add something to that. We say good news fast, bad news faster, which is just another turn of how you said it. The trick, in my estimation, is how does the leader respond when that bad news shows up?
That was such a good point, yeah.
How does the leader respond? If you bristle and you're defensive or anything else,
Yeah.
It's probably a pretty good chance it'll be a while before you get bad news again.
That's so true.
Yeah. Don't make it, and I guess it's a teaching moment, don't make it where your employees can't talk to you. I think the best thing that you can do is have an open environment. You can, as I always say, Ed, you can attest to it, I'm expressive, so I'll always express. But then I say, let's get smart on this. Let's sit down and use our brains to figure it out. And you create an environment where they can tell you really bad news so you can solve for it.
Many of you talked about optionality, complexity, customer centricity, and that relationship with product development and also marketing. That's tough right now as we've got, those issues of global unrest, inflation, changing demand. Give some insights to the group about how you manage that cross-functionally.
Well, one of the things we do is at the business unit level, we have teams that are focused on innovation. And those teams are made up of every function. And so there's a full seat at the table. I think that's one of the best things we do is we're thinking about innovation, as we're thinking about managing complexity, and as we're thinking about how do we drive to the best product and package that our consumer, our shopper wants to buy.
Yeah. I would say we have an extreme focus on customer, almost sometimes to our detriment. But if we are centered around what is the best experience for the customer, and this is again from new customer to current existing life improved that's sleeping on our bed, then we always come with the right solution. In that we have to weigh gross margin decision and other things, but for the most part, everyone sitting at the table is really centered around that experience. What is the customer going to feel, and how does this innovation help with that? We get a lot of push-pull with our product team. They love new stuff. I don't know anyone else's product. And where we've come full circle as an organization is that we can still have new product, but it's an and. We need to work on existing install base to eliminate waste and better the experience, better how quickly we can get a service part to a user, how we can recover that sleep better. So we kind of do this yes and, right? So yes, we can have new cool product, and we're gonna make sure that we're continuously improving the product that we're currently sleeping on.
But how do you know the true voice of the customer versus we all have bias, right?
Yeah, well, honestly, you have to. It's emerging. I think we as operational leaders, we have to be out there to challenge that, because if you think about it, you usually have the marketer that goes out and does the VOC. We should have a seat at the table as a supply chain organization to really push on that spec, because the voice of the customer translated has to be a specification to be made in the plants. So we have to give that feedback of when the rubber hits the road in the plants, because a lot of the things that we buy may be for NPI that never gets realized. And what is that? That's in inventory you had to write off. So we really have to be that feedback loop to the marketing teams and to even the customers to get out on those voice of customer visits and ask the questions that the customer may really try to lead to and the marketer may miss.
Well, part of that is learning to listen, right? I remember when I was working at Clorox, Rick, I had a guy by the name of James Mitchell, and I used to have a rotating program where they would go visit the customers to look at the inbound trucks. And he said to me one time in a team meeting, he said, I never knew how important it was when the door opened that my product looked good until I went to a retailer.
That's right.
Right?
And the idea about consumer insights is really powerful. That life in a CPG company is all about innovation. And all that innovation is not going to work, but you want to have really data-based insights with which to proceed with your innovation. I would say our marketing crew has gotten really good at that through the digital personalization effort that they're going into right now, and that's kind of a key part of our marketing and innovation strategy going forward.
Yeah, we've missed something, and I'm sorry I've missed it. Quality is a big part of the integrated supply chain.
Right.
Those folks own the customer relationship. Those folks sit in on distribution meetings. They go to the customer. They understand when things are not beautiful or they come out of the box bad or they have latent failures. That is a big part as you look at plan, source, make, and deliver. They're part of the planning piece, and it actually was the first end-to-end, right? It was the first end-to-end that went from concept to end of life, commercialization to end of life, and those people are very vital to that customer experience because they are the ones that's fielding the calls to make sure that we're doing what we say we're going to do from a customer standpoint.
Ashley, I thought it was very
Quality
interesting when you talked about the semiconductor market and some of your supplier development work to look at multiple tiers. And when I interview the semiconductor manufacturers, which 2 of them actually are Supply Chains to Admire award winners, they say one of the biggest issues we have is complexity and the fact that all of our volumes are low and the demand is very intermittent.
Yeah.
And the fact that people don't own the supply chain to the semiconductor and we're not recycling and demanufacturing chips, right? And they said if only we could have consolidation of the chip market, we would do much better on capacity. And so I think that's great insight for people because, I remember Dave Beeger spoke on stage one time about Campbell's and the fact that Campbell's had 33 different cuts of carrots in their soup and how they drove value by just that simplicity in supplier work. So I thought that was a great ad. What questions do you have for my panel? Let's run some mics and understand a little bit culturally about what makes a Supply Chains to Admire. So while they do that, what's your best story as you think about supply chain excellence? Anything hop to mind that, you learned about supply chain excellence to share?
I'll maybe touch on something we've learned. So I think I commented this to my team, my table over there. You guys have talked about bad news needs to spread faster than good news. We have a heroism in supply chain at Sleep Number. Sleep Number is a retail company and has not always prioritized their supply chain. And we're just getting comfortable with our voice at the table and telling the right stories. And we were setting up one of our assembly distribution centers. It was the first day. We had to get out, X amount of orders, 1,800 orders out of that facility. And in hour 1, hour 2, we had only produced 2 beds on the new line. And that's a problem, right? And a problem that should probably be escalated quickly because in our world, we are just in time. So that non-production means that there is a customer we're rescheduling at the end. And the sooner that we can relay that information back, the better the customer feels, right? If we can tell the customer we're not going to be there 2 days in advance, they feel better than if it's same day. Well, what we learned in that is we had heroes in our organization that were really trying to save that day. They knew that they only had produced 2 beds in that morning, but they thought for sure we're going to get that 1,800 beds out. And what they didn't do is utilize the team for support and help and to work through something. But what we use that failure, how we use that failure going forward is to help enforce a continuous improvement environment, which is great, thank you for doing what you did today, but let's reflect and understand how that will never happen again. And as we set up the remaining 6 new assembly lines, and we're transforming the assembly line to what we call 2.0, we have not missed a day yet. We haven't caused a reschedule since. So we started really terrible, but what we learned from that is we can't be heroes. We actually have to leverage the team we're going to use and reflect on how we're going to do things differently going forward.
I often tell people that the Dalmatian should be the dog for the supply chain because we react and we tend to run after fire trucks, right? Rick, how about yourself? Any stories to share?
Well, I told a little bit of it when I was talking earlier, but our best story around supply chain excellence happened during the pandemic when we wanted to double the capacity of our wipes production in our Atlanta plant. And between the time the board gave us money and we actually had the first case coming offline, it's about 8.5 months, but literally went from an empty room to a fully functional, highly automated line in about 4 months. And the best part of it wasn't just the engineering feat. A lot of the gear came from offshore, and that was at a time when not only was it tough to get gear here, but it was also tough to get the technicians here. So we had to work with a supply chain White House task force. We had to work with the U.S. State Department to get visas expedited. The state of Georgia was hugely instrumental in our success in moving some permits along faster for us. And so it really spoke to the need for collaboration and networking and really utilizing all your resources when you've got to get something done in a short time frame and you're not quite sure how to do it. So we put a lot of people into play and they came through for us.
A lot of culture there, right? Kevin, any stories to share?
Yeah, this story is not from Toro. It was actually a carrier story, and it was during the pandemic. We had 7 times more demand than we could produce in our Collierville, Tennessee plant. We were going through a pandemic. I think we had a 100% attrition rate. As many employees that we would hire, as many that would walk out the door. And what we built were splits, so AC and air conditioner and heat pumps. And with that plant, I was working in West Palm Beach at the carrier headquarters, had a struggling plant. I went to that plant and just stayed. I was in transition to Indianapolis. I still had my home in West Palm Beach. I got an apartment right down the street from the plant, and I worked probably 18 hours a day. I would shake every hand and motivate and lead, and I took an office that was right next to the plant director, senior director. And people would come in and say, not many vice presidents would come during a pandemic in a plant that had COVID and we'd do all the different treatments and wipe down. And you just stayed here and you would talk and engage us like it was just normal. And I took off, of course, my suit and I had my jeans and everything on. I said, well, if you're here, I'm here. I said, we'll get through this together. And I would always give messages and say, I miss smiling and talking to people. I said, my smile is usually how I make people feel calm. And I said, I just want to make sure that you understand that as your leader of multiple sites, I was in the plants during the entire time of the plant pandemic. I never led one day from the house. I was right on the ground, right with the folks. And, you know, it's paying dividends now for the Carrier Corporation because that momentum carried over due to me being right there with the people. Mine always go back to the people, no matter how much software we have. And I told you, I'm a technologist at heart, but you can't get through any of these things without the many men and women that's helped us together. And really in history, we've never gotten through anything without each other.
Right.
So anything.
So the gift of time, the presence, the smile, and the thank you. What a great gift. Yeah. Okay, we've got a microphone here, Madhav. One question.
So this is for you, Ashley. You're talking about building optionality. Optionality comes with a cost. If you need to split volumes between multiple suppliers or engaging multiple carriers or different modes of transportation, etc.
Yeah.
So how did you bring your finance organization on that journey, your CFO? How did those conversations go?
Yeah, actually, the finance team was probably an easier sell. We have, I think I've mentioned this a couple times, a ton of waste when we have to go to a customer several times or reschedule them. And because we're just in time, we have to have optionality. We actually don't have a choice. Beds do not move if we can't put the right chips, if they don't operate. And the cost of that is more detrimental to our organization if we don't do it. For sure, we're getting pressure to take waste out other places, of course, but I think we really had to focus on how do we not hinder the flow of our material, and how do we make sure that we get it to the customer. And it is a little bit, because our SKU segmentation is so that we really are focused on one line at a time, right? It's not as expensive as if you were to do it for, a D SKU or whatever. We have kind of one line, and that's where we focus, and we focus a little on old and legacy through our parts and warranty. But yeah, they were the easy ones, believe it or not, because we had this saying that the business was beholden to one chip, and that's not a good place you want to be in if you're trying to make your quarter. So.
And make us sleep better. Okay, another question. Let's move the mics around. Be sure you hold the mic to your mouth. Yeah.
Hey, Rick, I believe in your presentation you had a bullet point around working with the BU on their brand strategy and incorporating that in design. Just curious if you could talk a little bit more about that and how you balance that with your broader supply chain strategy and some of the other constraints that you have in your purview.
Yeah, so the approach we use is through the value chain segmentation vehicle, that process. And we certainly have ideas about what makes for a good supply chain and how well it works and where some of the positives are and where some of the opportunities are. When we have that value chain segmentation conversation with the business unit, we capture their input relative to what they think is important for the purpose of their brand and what they're trying to achieve. Do they want low cost? Do they want flexible? Do they want responsive? And how much of a lever in each of those areas are they willing to pull, understanding the implications of that lever pull? So we're basically taking the best of what they can offer, the best of what we can offer, and creating a supply chain design through the value segmentation process.
But I would encourage you to read his case study where they've got clearly defined definitions to be able to have that conversation. I find very few companies have those clearly defined definitions and training behind it. Next question. Anyone else got a question? Okay, over here, Jenny.
Thank you. Mine is probably for all of you, but I wanted to start with Kevin and talk more about alignment in the integrated supply chain. So you talked about the verses that can happen within different parts. What are some of those strategies that you've helped use or seen be successful to bring those different parts of the supply chain together on aligned goals?
I call it the make a friend strategy. So, and I say that because we are always opposing and optimizing within our silo. If we open ourselves up and ask the question and engage in the upstream and say what problem we're trying to solve, we all get on the same page by understanding one another. And once you have those goal alignments across that horizon from the inputs because we need the BU. That's our signal. The BU is our signal before we do anything in the supply chain. So the better you engage, the better you understand, the better you ask questions, the better you get a seat at the table and let them know the result, the financial result, if we get the wrong signal, be it WIP, finished goods inventory, not supplying our customer, and articulate that, then we get aligned and then we can all be in that common alignment of servicing our customers in a better way.
I love the make the friend, and your style is so engaging. Mm-hmm. Right? You know, you don't feel anything but, just love, And so I think it's great influence management. The number one issue that employees say that is an issue in the supply chain is influence management and empathy. How about Rick or Ashley? Your thoughts there?
Well, so the question I start with is, what is the problem we're trying to solve? You just said this. What's the problem we're trying to solve? Because oftentimes it's unarticulated except for maybe a few words or maybe a lot of words, but it's not clear what issue we're really trying to get at. And once you can get clear on that, then it opens you up to lots of options with different implications. And one of our jobs in the supply chain is to give the business unit leader options and to cost those options and to talk about the service implications of those options or working capital or supplier all the implications, just paint the picture for each of those options, and then the best decision can be made, but you got to start with what are you trying to fix?
And I think that's diffusing the anger bomb, right? Every supply chain leader is going to get the anger calls, right? And you got to diffuse the anger bomb. Like, what is the problem we're trying to solve, and how can we work together, right?
That's right.
Yeah. We're the Jedi of the supply chain. We keep the peace because we don't remember, thankless, we don't get the call to say, great job.
You did a great job.
We get the call to say, man, my customer needs this product. So it's our job to remain calm and to the point. What are we really trying to solve for?
Yeah. This year, through our strategy conversations with the supply chain leadership, we are actually trying to become less of order takers, more proactive in front of the business. So we have a principle that most of our business challenges manifest themselves within the supply chain. So if we become very good storytellers and can articulate the impact of those business decisions to our end customer, but relate it back to the supply chain, we're going to win a lot of minds and hearts over. So we actually have talked about creating more storytellers within our organization to start to influence better than order take.
Yeah, I want to piggyback because Ed's laughing, and his big thing is we oftentimes don't control our message. We let people tell what they think it is. We know the real reasons why, and we have to become more articulate to be able to convey that, and we get in front of it versus waiting for it to happen to us. We have to control that message, and that's what our CFO depends on us for. That's what our CEO depends on us for, because we're in vogue. We're supply chain. Everything supply chain in every earnings report. A supply chain disruption, so we have to tell the reasons why, and we're the best ones to tell it.
We're gonna have a party when supply chain isn't mentioned in our earnings.
Oh.
I encourage everyone.
I want to come.
Yeah, we don't know when that'll be, but we're gonna do a party.
Ladies and gentlemen, okay, one more question, Matt. Go ahead.
What keeps you awake at night?
Nothing. I get a great night's sleep.
Yeah, but you're 72. What a snowball question. Okay, all right. She paid you for that one, right? Everybody's going to get a bed. Okay.
What keeps me up in that? I'm naturally very calm on the inside, and I tell everybody I'm always smiling, but I'm boiling on the inside because I'm impatient. So what keeps me up at night is how can we have enough time to fix it? Because I'm an engineer. So it's naturally any problem that I get, I want to fix it. But will we be given enough time to apply all these great strategies and to fix a problem? And I get back to the basis of all of it. It's an issue, it's a problem. We got brains, we can fix it. And that's really just the toiling of how can I fix it keeps me up at night.
Rick, you sleeping well on your sleep number bed?
I'm going to have to get one of those beds, that's for sure.
She's got a friend and family program.
Yeah, for sure. There are many challenges, of course. I think the one that keeps me awake is just this idea of how much we're trying to accomplish at the same time. So we've got our digital initiative, we've got our company restructuring, we've got labor challenges, inflation is huge for all of us. It really is the transformation of the company. I've got a lot of confidence in our strategy, our Ignite strategy. I've got a lot of confidence in the players, but it's a lot. And so we're just going to have really good change management capability and drive it forward as we usually do. But there's a lot going on at the same time.
Yeah.
So Regina, if you could come forward, we were going to now present the awards. So Kevin, I'd like to have you stand, and we're going to present your award. Kevin, great leadership.
Thank you
It
so
gives us
much.
great pleasure to present the Supply Chains to Admire Award to Toro. And I actually love my Toro equipment. I'm a gardener. I have a whole shed full. So Kevin, your Supply Chains to Admire
Thank you so
Award.
much. Thank you so much.
Now, part of this is you get a digital image, and so I hope everybody out there knows that Supply Chains to Admire Award winners are all about culture and that they sign up to work for you. Absolutely. So thank you very much for coming. And now, Ashley, Sleep Number, a 4-time award winner.
Thank you, Regina.
We love the product and the innovation, and you always give a great presentation. Thank you. So let's take a picture. And it's a great product. And Rick, thank you so much for getting us all those products in the pandemic. I love the story of how you hired someone to help you with the data science around COVID to keep your plants safe. Thank you so much. Let's have a big round of applause for all the award winners. Thank you very much. If we can have everybody just come here, we'll get one picture because I know you're going to run off on me. Yeah, and I want to be sure you get a book. Absolutely. So, just one final picture. Let's give them one more round of applause.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.